Let's get right into this soft glam edit. It is a long one. I did this look a couple weeks ago for my sister when she went to the Summer Walker concert. Something simple and cute. I went straight in with my Thayer's Rose Water Toner, or more so a witch hazel, to clean and hydrate the skin. Y'all can see she's getting excited and activated here, but I went in with my Dr. Pawpaw lip balm for the lips and then went in with my Good Molecules lightweight moisturizer on her face. I like to use a foundation brush to massage and work in that skincare, especially around the eyes and around the nose, to really make sure it's worked into those creases. Using that same foundation brush, I'm going in with my Benefit Matte Pore Primer to prime the skin, especially under the eyes and around the nose like before, to make sure those creases can't settle in. I find that it's really good at taking up all that excess oil and reducing the creases. I'm also going to take that Benefit primer with a concealer brush and use that as an eyeshadow primer on the lids. Again, it's really good at taking up excess oil and reducing creases. For her brows, I'm just going to go in with my NYX brow glue and slick them down and make sure they're nice and neat looking. She likes hers to be more natural looking since they're already pretty dark and full. She does not like to fill them in with a pencil all that much, if ever. Once those are slicked down, I'm going in with my e.l.f. Hydrating Camo Concealer. I believe this is the shade Deep Cinnamon. And I'm going to carve out her brows and also start prepping the eyelid for eyeshadow. I'm using mostly e.l.f. brushes and a few Real Technique brushes for this whole look. I have been using e.l.f. since I started my own makeup back in high school, and they're pretty good quality, pretty affordable as well, and they have a nice range of brushes for different things. So they are definitely beginner friendly, and I recommend them to most everybody when they're asking what brushes to use when they start out. You can see here I'm going in with a smaller concealer brush to really make sure right under that brow bone it's blended, as well as in that inner corner to make sure that everything is fully prepped and blended out. I am missing a clip, but after I blended out that concealer, I took the Benefit Pore Powder and I dusted that all over to kind of set the concealer. And then I went in with the Essence Bronzing Palette in their deepest shade and used that as a transition color into her crease. Now you see me going in with my Juvia's Place Coffee Shop palette, and I'm mixing a couple shades together to get that deeper brown, and I'm using a dense eyeshadow brush to place that color and pack on that pigment all over her lid. I'm then going back in with that same bronzing color that I used for the transition and a fluffy brush to blend out those edges on the darker brown concealer, just making sure the blend looks seamless and not too harsh. I do keep that dense eyeshadow brush on hand and I go back and forward making sure I'm not losing too much pigment with my blending. Now here I want to pull in some of the green that you see in her top. I used the NYX Face and Body Glitter in the shade Ice. It has a little bit of a green reflect, but because I didn't use a glitter glue, it came off a little bit too subtle, and you don't really see it show up here in the clip, but it was a little more prominent in real life. I then go in with my Anastasia Beverly Hills liquid eyeliner in the shade Black, and I give her a little bit of a more baby wing. Nothing too dramatic. Again, we're keeping it pretty soft and simple, but we did want to add that little bit of flair and darkness to the top of the eye. In a moment here, you can see that she opens her eyes a little too early and that black smudges onto the eyeshadow, but not to fret, there's always a way to fix it. So I take some micellar water on a Q-tip and I start wiping away just where that smudge is, being careful not to get too messy and disturb the rest of the eyeshadow look. I then go in with the dry cotton round and just pat that area dry so that that residue doesn't disturb the rest of the makeup. And you'll see me go in with the little bit of excess concealer that's already on my brush and dab it in that area to kind of give the new eyeshadow something to stick to. Then of course it's the same order of operations. I first go in with that bronzer shade from the Essence palette, and you can already see that it's going to start kind of blending in and kind of camouflaging that patchwork. And then I go back in with those same brown tones from the Coffee Shop palette to make sure everything is blended and looks even. I then go on to do her lashes. We decided to use the INV Chic 3D collection, and it is the number 3 lashes. They're kind of, they're pretty full, but still have those wispy and a nice kind of cat eye shape to them. And I like to just fan those dry while also pushing down on those corners because those tend to be the places that it wants to fly up first when you're putting them on. For her foundation, I'm going in with the Maybelline Fit Me Matte Foundation, and I'm using a mix of the shade 358 Latte and 360 Mocha. I only mix a tiny bit of the Mocha in for her, just a little bit to deepen up the latte so she doesn't look too pale. I also like to blend my foundation in section by section, so going from like cheek, chin, cheek, nose, forehead. That way I don't get overwhelmed with blending and I can make sure everything is perfected and airbrushed before I move on. I saw there was some glitter fallout under her eyes, so I just took a cotton round and tried to sweep it away as best as I could. Of course, it's kind of sticky, glitter gets everywhere, but I just swept away most of it. I then go in with a flat concealer brush to carve out the brows with her foundation shade. I like to do this instead of the concealer, that way we don't get that halo brow effect and things can be a little more seamless. Using the e.l.f. liquid bronzer in the shade Deep, I go along her nose, her cheekbones, and her forehead. I don't often contour around the jawline, just because I feel like it gives a little bit of a weird shadow, but I put my placements there and go in with a kind of almost like a concealer brush and blend out all those spots to be nice and diffused. For my liquids and creams, I tend to like smaller brushes just so I can be more precise, especially with the contour since it does have to be in a certain placement to look right and I don't want it to get too muddy. I will use a smaller, almost concealer brush to blend everything out. This one here is the e.l.f. Putty Bronzer brush, but it's very similar to a concealer brush, so you can get away with either. For her nose, I'm taking an even smaller concealer brush and making sure everything is blended up until that brow bone, and also using that bronzer transition shade as a transition into the nose contour as well so everything can look seamless. I'm going in with that same e.l.f. hydrating concealer that I used for her eyes in the shade Deep Cinnamon. I'm placing it on her chin, forehead, around her nose, and of course under the eye. I'm learning to be a little more intentional with how I do my placements, especially with the under eye concealer. So you'll see I'm really taking my time to kind of place everything and make sure under the eye is going to be flawless as possible. I like to blend the concealer out last, that's under the eye, just so that it can sit down and be as full coverage as possible there. I start at the edges and will blend outward toward the temple area so we can get that lift and snatch going on. And I'm also taking this time to kind of carve out that wing and that eyeshadow so that everything can look blended together. I go in with that smaller concealer brush to get right into that inner corner, blending that out last since that is typically where people need the most coverage to hide the darkness. I take what's left on my foundation brush and blend and marry in that contour concealer together, especially around the nose bridge where it was looking a little unblended to me. I take my Juvia's Place liquid blush in the shade Rosy Posy, going in with just one dot on each cheek to start with. She is more of a subtle blush girly, like even this blush was a lot for her, so I started out with one and built it up as I went. I like to do my liquid blush after concealer because I do like a more pigmented and blush forward face. And I feel that if you do it before the concealer, you start losing some of that pigment. To set the under eye, I first go in with my small concealer brush, blending out all those creases, and then I go in with the Maybelline Fit Me Pressed powder in the shade 334 to set under the eyes. Again, with that Essence palette, I'm taking the deepest shade and reinforcing her liquid contour along her cheek, forehead, and her nose. For powder blush, I'm using the Juvia's Place Volume 4, and I'm only going in with that darker shade. I'm also going in with that 334 powder from Maybelline to kind of marry and kiss the blush and under eye together, making sure there's no harsh lines. I also use that to set her forehead, around the mouth, and along her nose a little bit, again to kind of reinforce those highlight areas. For the perimeter of her face, I'm going in with the Maybelline Fit Me Pressed Powder in the shade 360 Mocha. To highlight her cheek, nose, and cupid's bow, I'm going in with the NYX Buttermelt Highlighter in the shade You Better Work. For the under eye, I'm going in with a shimmery navy blue eyeliner. This one is from an Amazon brand and it came in a pack of like 20 with a lot of different colors. I will pop up a picture here. I bought this pack when I was first starting out, but they are a little on the harder side and not as creamy, so I'll definitely be upgrading soon. For lower lashes, I'm going in with the Anastasia Lash Sculpt Mascara. Any thick, creamy, volumizing mascara will do for the underlash. Just something that's gonna coat around those fine lashes and help them pop out. For lip liner, I'm going in with my Juvia's Place lip liner in the shade Coffee Bean. And she has pretty full natural lips already, so I'm just following her natural line, not overlining at all for her. You will see me kind of take a step back and look at the liner, making sure things are looking even, and again, being very intentional with my placement and looking at all those finer little details that help make the look more complete. For lipstick, I'm going in with the Maybelline Superstay Ink Liquid Lipstick in the shade Loyalist. It's their lightest shade, I believe, and I love it on brown skin tones with a dark brown liner. It gives that brat lip kind of look that a lot of the girls go for these days. I'm taking a small eyeshadow brush, almost like a paddle brush here, and using that to blend and ombre the lip liner and the lipstick together. I find I've been liking this method more than having them smack their lips together because it gives me a little bit more control on the blend. For my lip gloss, I take the NYX Butter Gloss in the shade Ginger Snap, and I use that to outline my brown lip liner. And then for the rest of the lip, I just take my NYX Butter Gloss in the shade Clear to go over that pink and ombre everything together. To finish up, I go in with 3 rounds of my Morphe Continuous Setting Mist in the original formula, and then one final set with the L'Oreal Infallible Setting Spray, using my fan in between each spritz to dry everything down. Now that we're done, we're gonna unpin these curls and get into our final shots. Be sure to comment, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram and TikTok at makeupbyash04.